The Lusitania was a top British and world ocean liner going between the USA and Britain across the Atlantic. Britain was in the middle of fighting World War One against Germany, but the USA was not in the war yet and officially neutral, but leaning towards Britain. Germany was getting desperate in the war and announced it would sink all British ships, whether the ships were passenger, civilian or warships on the high seas, especially in the Atlantic. It placed warnings and threats in newspaper articles that Americans should not go on British ships if they did not want to be killed. The Americans responded that they would not want to be intimidated by Germany. They also weren't in the war and as neutrals, so they could go on whatever ships they liked. The giant luxury British passenger ship sailed from safe harbour in neutral US New York, heading to Britain with hundreds of Americans aboard among 1,500 civilians. The Germans warned it could be sunk. In sight of the Irish coast, only a few miles away, and almost in Britain in the afternoon of Friday the 7th May, in broad daylight, a German submarine in a sneak attack sunk it, killing 12,000 civilians, including about 200 Americans, causing world outrage. The unwarranted sinking helped bring the USA in the war against Germany in 1917. The fault was purely German, who did it on purpose and in daylight. Responding to world outrage, they later tried to make up false excuses that it was carrying weapons, or they warned that would kill and sink civilian ships. But in fact, it was carrying no significant weapons, and it was never proved it was carrying any at all, and killing all and sinking civilians was then, as now, against international law. Although denied by the British at the time, recent underwater explorations have proved that the ship was carrying war munitions and was thus a legitimate military target in terms of the law of the day. The song, When the Lusitania Went Down, was written 13 days after, obviously, the Lusitania went down. This is as follows. The nation is sad as it can be. A message came over the sea. 1,000 more who sailed from our shore have gone to eternity. The Statue of Liberty high must now have a tear in her eye. I think it's a shame someone is to blame, but all we can do is just sigh. Some of us lost a true sweetheart. Some of us lost a dear dad. Some lost their mothers, sisters and brothers. Some lost the best friends they had. It's time they were stopping this warfare. If women and children must drown, many hearts went to sleep in the deep when the Lusitania went down. A lesson to all it should be when we feel like crossing the sea. American ships that sail from our slips are safer for you and me. A Yankee can go anywhere as long as our glory is there. Although they were warned, the warning they scorned, and now must cry in despair. Some of us lost our sweethearts, some of us lost our dear dad. Some lost their mothers, sisters and brothers, some lost their best friends they had. It's time that we were stopping this warfare, if women and children must drown. Many brave hearts went to sleep in the deep when the Lusitania went down. And that was a primary or secondary source, because we don't know whether someone off the ship wrote it. An eyewitness account from Captain Squashnever kept a diary on the voyage. This is describing what happened to the Lusitania in the early afternoon of May 7th, 1915. 2 p.m. Straight ahead, the 4 funnels and 3 masts of a steamer with a course at right angles to ours. Ship is made out to be a large passenger liner. 3:05 p.m. Went to 11 metres and ran at high speed on a course converging with that of the steamer. It hoped that it would change course to starboard along the Irish coast. The steamer turned to starboard, headed for Queenstown, and thus made it possible to approach for a shot. Ran at high speed till 3 p.m. in order to secure an advantage position. 3:10 p.m. Clear bow shot at 700 metres. Angle of intersection 90 degrees. Estimated speed 22 nautical miles. Shot struck starboard side close behind the bridge. An extraordinary heavy denotation followed, with a very large cloud of smoke far above the front funnel. A second explosion must have followed of the torpedo, boiler or coal or powder. The superstructure above the point of impact and the bridge were torn apart. Fire broke out, light smoke veiled in high bridge. The ship stopped immediately and quickly listed sharply to starboard, sinking deeper by the head at the same time. Great confusion arose on the ship. Some of the boats were swung clear and lowered into the water. Many people must have lost their heads. Several boats loaded with people rushed downward, struck the water bow or stern first and filled at once. On the port side, because of the sloping position, fewer boats were swung clear than on the starboard side. The ship blew off steam, and the boat, the name Lusitania in golden letters, were visible. It was running 20 nautical miles. Since it seemed as if the steamer could only remain above water for a short time, went to 24 metres and ran toward the sea. Nor could I fire a second torpedo into this swarm of people who were trying to save themselves. Went to 11 metres and took a look around. In the distance, straight ahead, was a number of lifeboats were moving. Nothing that could be seen of the Lusitania, and wreck must lie 14 nautical miles off the old head of Kingsale Lighthouse, at an angle of 358 degrees to the right of it, and 90 metres in water, 27 nautical miles from Queenstown. 51 degrees, 26 feet and 6 inches, N and 8 degrees, 31 feet W. The land and the lighthouse could be seen very plainly. When taking a look 4:20 p.m. When taking a look around, a large steamer was in sight ahead on the port side, with course laid for Fastnet Rock. Tried to get ahead at high speed so as to get a stern shot. Then, at 5:08 p.m, conditions for shots very favourable. No possibility of missing if torpedo kept its course. Torpedo did not strike. Since the telescope was cut off some time after this shot, was cause of failure could not be determined. The steamer or freighter was the Cunard Line. 6:15 p.m. It is remarkable that there is so much traffic on this particular day, although 2 large steamers were sunk the day before south of George's Channel. It is also inexplicable that the Lusitania was not sent through the North Channel, and then this was a primary source. In way of conclusion, I think that the Germans weren't right to sink a passenger sink, although the British filled it up with military weapons, so they're in on too. So like the song said, I don't think you should be blaming anyone, but just stopping the war and agreeing for once. Thank you for listening to me, and this is my history homework for 9-2.